fun and cool. And I'm sure that you guys all really liked Ryan's talk last week. I thought it was amazing. And this got me so excited that that I actually had to write a poem.
All right.
It's in a classic style, if you can guess it. Mugman likes to talk about soul. Batista knows the oak's role. But me, I'm embarrassed. I hope only to perish when people talk about my bunghole.
Very nice. Very well done, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you. I worked on that all night.
That's very good. You've done a very good job. That's hard work getting these together. Very good. Yeah, we're in a land full of poets down here in the county, and Lee's the newest collection. So welcome to it.
This is a series of poems.
This will be the County Collab series.
The County Collab series of poems. That's the second. The other one, you saw the other one on the Instagram post, right?
Yeah, and it's still there, I hope, right? So if for whatever reason you haven't seen it, I encourage everyone to stop what they're doing after this, of course, and watch it.
But the one thing I would like to do is get everybody drinking. So let's just jump right into the wine. So you got the Pinot Gris here. Oh shoot, wrong bottle. Ugh. It's a little embarrassing. The Pinot Gris from 2019, Niagara sourced grapes. Because unfortunately here in Redtail, we didn't have any vineyards to grab any fruit from. But that's a story that we'll talk about later on, I'm sure. Again, 100% fermented in oak barrels, about 50% new oak. And it only spent about 14 days in that oak. And then I drew it out right away to kind of keep the freshness. I was only using the oak only to manipulate maybe the texture and the palate, and not really trying to drive the aroma or any type of woody character to the wine. Also using it as a fermentation vessel where I didn't need any temperature type control because I was using limited resources. So using smaller ferments will enable me to control the temperature of the fermentation and not let it get out of control. So Jay, before I give you any biases, what do you get on the nose of this wine? You're the sommelier, you're the expert taster.
Thanks. This is a lovely wine. It jumps right out of the glass with stone fruits. So, and it's a classic Pinot Gris for me. As we both spent some time in BC, it's a little bit different, a little bit leaner, but it still has that apricot-y, peachy, a little bit pear and lean to the sort of green apple-y on the nose for sure, but a little bit of smoky minerality as well. Right.
I think that smokiness and maybe the minerality maybe comes from a little bit of reduction that may have happened. It started getting quite reductive during the ferment. So during fermentation, if it goes a little bit quickly, you tend to have more reductiveness. And the reason for that is because they're consuming so much, the yeasts are consuming so much nitrogen that they, sorry, I should take all these notifications off of here. Consuming so many nutrients that they can get a little bit stinky, and they give a little bit of a reductive edge. A lot of people really enjoy reductiveness, and it's something that people really kind of grabbed onto as being a quality marker in some wine. So it's something that people started to gravitate to. So winemakers started pushing it until we got some really kind of stinky wines. And reduction can be a fault just as much as anything else can be, like VA or oxidation. But when it's just there to add some depth and some complexity, which I really enjoy about this wine.
So can you explain a little bit about what reduction is and how to mitigate it during the ferments?
For sure. So reduction is the lack of oxygen. So it's oxygen-loving kind of molecules. The one specifically that I'm talking about here is called H2S. It kind of smells like that smokiness, but like in the worst case scenario, it really smells like rotten eggs, kind of farty, which is not really desirable, but it's really nice to have something that, you know, adds into question, like, is this reductive? Is it not reductive? If I'm making you question something or think about the wine, then I think I've done my job. So the ways that you can mitigate it is temperature, like the one thing that I said, but the main thing is actually the nutrition within the juice itself. Yeasts are nitrogen loving creatures. When they're building their DNA, all those amino acids have nitrogen in it. And then part of one of their pathways requires nitrogen. And if there's not enough nitrogen, it's not making the nitrogen backbone for the amino acid, but it's making H2S on the side. So it keeps on making H2S and it has nowhere to go but out. And that's what makes it kind of stinky.
So sometimes it can be good. Some is telltale, some is very classic, but other times it's too much, maybe, is bad.
Yes, exactly. There's no reason to put something into bottle that's overly reductive and overly stinky. Again, because as I said earlier, that it's just as much a fault as anything else. But if something is slightly reductive, it actually adds aging potential and preserves the fruit of the wine. And it also adds kind of that depth and complexity. On the other scale, you're covering up all the fruit and everything else in there, and you're only getting a one note, and that's that kind of stinky reductive.
And will that wear away? If you're saying it helps with ageability, will some of that wear away and that fruit come back after 5 to 10?
Yeah, so over time with oxygen ingress, you'll actually find that the aromatics complexity of the wine will actually come back. The H2S will actually react with the oxygen that slowly ingresses into the bottle, as long as it's a small amount of H2S that's actually in there. If there's an abundance of it, then it actually can turn into something worse. It can turn into disulfides. It can turn into, I'm forgetting off the top, mercaptans. And those have more distinct characteristics such as burnt rubber, cabbage, garlic. That's the extreme side of reduction. Where if you get a little bit of that hint of, it doesn't sound pleasant, rotten egg, but like it's just hidden in the back there, and you get that kind of smoky kind of, and some people will say that will add to the mineral kind of characteristic of the wine, then I've done my job.
And so to help mitigate some of that, if you're using reduction as an ageable tool for your wine, to help mitigate some of that. Oh, hold on a second. Hey, Batista, ciao.
Prego.
If I'm gonna turn it off. That's all right. To help mitigate some of that reductiveness and ageability, if you open it too young, what can you do to sort of offset some of that?
Sorry, can you just, so if it goes in the bottle too young and it still has some of that reductiveness, how can you mitigate that after you open the bottle? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess like if you're using reduction as a tool to help ageability and to help, bind some of that, what can you do if you open it before it's ready?
The classic stir it in your glass or decant it, right? So if you're opening something, you smell a little reduction, put it in a decanter, swirl it around in a bigger glass. That oxygen will get in there. It will really open up and find those hidden characteristics within the wine.
Do you find some wines around the world are classically telltale more reductive than others? And if so, which are they?
Here we go. Like locally, there are several winemakers that were known to be really reductive. But Chardonnays in the classic Burgundian sense tended to really be reductive in that style. Some Rieslings as well in the old world tended to be a lot, really reductive. So when we look at the old world versus the new world, sometimes the old world fashion is to add less. And if you're adding less nutrient into the juice, then it will tend to be more reductive. If you're not using granular fertilizers and pumping your vineyards full of nitrogen, then there may be less nitrogen within the juice at the beginning, so that way it will be more reductive during the fermentation. if you're fermenting in oak barrels with no temperature control, and it gets hot and it consumes that nitrogen really quickly, then that will tend to be reductive as well. So all of these things, to answer your question, I would say old world style wines would tend to be more reductive than new world style wines, where when they get the juice in, they're doing an analysis, a chemical analysis, to find out exactly how much nitrogen is in there. And we know as trained winemakers how much nitrogen is required for a clean fermentation without the reduction. And then so we can add that nitrogen in there.
If need be. Okay. And do you find more whites or reds be more reductive, or is it just kind of like
either can be. I would say that I would find more whites to be. The reason is probably stylistic more so than anything. The other thing that we do during red wine fermentation, differently than in white wine fermentation, is pump overs, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a cap form at the top of a tank. And at the top of that tank, we have to push those skins back into the liquid to keep them wet. And so sometimes what we do is we actually take juice or wine from the bottom of the tank and pump it over to the top. And what we're doing is we're getting a whole bunch of oxygen in there. And that oxygen is really good for the yeast, but it also binds up with that H2S, and the H2S will actually blow off. If you have a really reductive red ferment and you're doing a pump over, the whole place will smell like rotten eggs. But if it's in the air, it's not in the wine, right? So then effectively you're getting some of it into the atmosphere and taking it out of the wine.
So yeah, okay. And so most commonly, we'd probably most likely find it in white wines. I
would say so.
Right. So I guess what's that?
I would say so, but I really don't know.
Yeah, no, and that's just been my experience. And I guess the point I'm trying to reach here and get to is that it's okay to decant white wine and splash it around. There's nothing wrong with that. People, when I worked in restaurants and often when I'm at home, sometimes we'll just splash it around in a decanter and just helps aerate it, open up, and all that fruit comes up. So no reason to be discouraged to not put white wine into a decanter, I guess is the point, if we find too much reduction in the wines.
Sure. I just wanted to pause for 1 second and ask everybody, are you drinking? Because you should be drinking. I'm drinking. Are you drinking?
Right. Hands up for drinking. Oh, there we go. Okay.
I've been drinking not all day. No, all day. Yeah, no. No.
So tell us more about this wine. Where in Niagara are the grapes purchased?
Cool. So it's actually from two different places. One, I'm not really supposed to talk to people publicly, but it's a sustainably farmed place in Niagara that I worked at when I was in university for 2 years. It actually got a little bit of skin contact. That part of it is actually the main part of a wine that we'll be talking about next county collab. So it may have a little bit of color in the bottle that you might see. It's not perfectly brilliantly white, and that's because half of it actually did get two days of skin contact. The other place was Fielding. Hands up if you know who Fielding is in Niagara. There you go. Got a couple of people in there. They're great growers, great people, and I love dealing with them. This harvest was really kind of a different one for me. I kind of took over the reins here as actually sourcing the fruit and everything, not until a couple months before harvest. So I actually had to make a lot of personal phone calls to a lot of my personal friends and ask for favors. So that's how I got a decent amount of the fruit this year. And it was really cool because I got to bond over some glasses of wine and go to some crush pads that I haven't been to in a while, and walk some vineyards that I used to work in when I was making my way up in the wine world. So that was a really fun experience. But the other thing that I was dealing with was a situation where what you see behind me is the entire barrel cellar at Redtail. And the tank room is actually about this, no, it's smaller. So I didn't have many resources, many tanks. I had a bunch of barrels that were purchased by a different winemaker before, and I was faced with a struggling question of where am I going to put and ferment this Pinot Gris And what am I going to do with all this new oak? Because I had a fair amount of new oak and before the Chard came in, because the Pinot Gris was picked earlier. When I was in BC, there was a small producer there. I forget the name of it offhand. And his wine really stuck in my mind. It was 100% new French oak fermented wine. It was a Chardonnay, and it was the fruitiest, most gorgeous, most expressive Chardonnay I tried while I was out there. And I kept thinking about it. It was 100% new oak, and I was like, man, this must have been really smoky and everything like that before I tried it. And when I tried it, I was actually super surprised. And so it reminded me of what I should do here is ferment this Pinot Gris. And actually these barrels here that are holding the Chardonnay, and it was 50% new oak. And then it's just as the tail end finish of the ferment, I pulled it out and let it settle and finish the rest of the winemaking with it in stainless steel, to preserve that freshness. But what I find that it does is actually enhances the aromatics and actually builds up a fair amount of texture on the palate. We didn't talk about the palate yet. But I find that it adds kind of a mid-palate, a little bit of phenolics maybe, but nothing over the top. What do you think about the palate? And so,
well, that's what I was just going to go for. What does anybody have anything else to add about the nose that we've discussed? Please feel free to comment in the chat. On the palate, I think it's got certainly some nice texture to it, which is exciting. Often Pinot Gris can go that Pinot Grigio way, where it's very light and insipid, and sometimes it can be really full throttle, maybe and layered and textured, which is where I'm finding this to be.
Right. It's going to be a good acid, a good length of finish. Maybe the length of finish had something to do with the oak as well. Just add that extra layer of complexity and depth into it. And then we talk about dry weights a little bit in University of Wine. I keep on touching my face. I'm not supposed to touch my face, but I have allergies. Yeah, we talk about dry weight. So if you take a wine and you dehydrate it completely and weigh what's at the bottom of the glass, that's a measure of the other things other than just wine and alcohol that's within that certain wine. So by putting it in an oak and fermenting it in an oak, we're actually going to increase the amount of other things other than liquid and alcohol in there.
Okay. And it's dry weight. And then from oak, you had 50% brand new, 50% old oak, or was it stainless? Sorry.
No, 50% older oak. Some of it only second year, oldest third year. So it's a fair amount of new oak. So actually the other thing that I was able to accomplish is strip out some of the characteristics of those new oaks. So that way I diminish the amount of oak that's going to be in my Chardonnay for this year as well.
For this year. And then from all that, you were almost finished and then into stainless, right?
Into stainless, yeah, where I sulfured it to inhibit malolactic fermentation, keep that fresh acidity that's really bright, and keep it kind of like a serious food style wine. And then I was able to put it into a cold room to stabilize it as well, so we don't get crystals at the bottom of your bottle. And then I really, really quickly put it into bottle as much as I could. Sorry, my internet seems to be a little bit weird right now.
Yeah. Good job. Yeah, it is a little. Maybe because you're in the cellar, it's hard to get in. And no.
Yeah, no, it's pretty.
Are you there, Lee? Wait, you're stuck, but people are. Who are these little devils?
Guys, what are you doing? Get out of here. Trying to do Zoom calls, this is crazy. Come on, sorry, get no privacy around here.
There's the assistant winemakers.
The cellar hands, or cellar rats, I should say.
Right on. So tell us more about the oak program that you're using. What else is in the barrels? What are you using it for?
Yeah, so Okay, go find one more. I hid some chocolate cookies in the back, so they do that for you. So this was actually fermented in 500-liter puncheons. So I enjoy using bigger oak formats for white wine specifically. Due to the surface area to volume ratio, you actually get more of the fruitiness character into the wine and less oaky character as well that way, and less oxygen ingress. So you can actually, for Chardonnays, you can actually push élevage a little bit further with being able to pick out a certain time to put in the bottle a little bit more accurately because it ages a little bit slower in the bigger vessel.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then over on this side, we got your regular barriques, which are 228 liters because of the Burgundy style. Those are used mainly for our red wine program for the Pinot Noir. Because they're fermented on skins, you have a little bit more tannic structure and you're able to age them with a little bit more oxygen ingress. And they're protected a little bit further with the phenolic structure of the wine. Yeah, buddy. Can't find any of them? Just 1 second, I'm gonna give him a hand.
While he's busy there, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to toss them in the chats there, and we can get Lee back to answer some questions.
You found them.
You found them?
Oh my goodness, did you see my pants?
Those are pretty flash.
You guys weren't supposed to see my pants.
So one thing you've mentioned a few times is oxygen ingress. For those that don't know, and might be, what exactly does that mean? How does that react?
Yeah, specifically within the barrel. So like literally it's just oxygen getting into the wine over time. So a lot of work has been done in dissolved oxygen within wine during different periods of the production of it. So during the fermentation, there's practically no oxygen because the yeast consume it right away. They are loving oxygen in there. Do you have ever used Riesling tanks to protect fruitiness? Riesling tanks? No, just stainless steel tanks? Yeah, for sure, Batista. But the oxygen in a barrel, and so through the staves or in between where the staves meet actually is where they're staying in the bunghole itself is where the majority of the oxygen comes in. And so within a barrel, the slow ingress of oxygen penetrates the oak, no matter how it does it, into the wine, and that oxygen will have chemical reactions with other chemicals within the wine, and will develop it in certain ways. Depending on whether there's SO2 present or if there's high phenolic content of the wine, it will react in very different ways.
So it's desired to some extent.
In some forms of winemaking, it is very desired, and in other forms of winemaking, it's actually frowned upon. And you actually a New Zealand style Sauvignon Blanc, for instance, you want to keep that kind of grassiness and that greenness and that gooseberry tone. So what they actually do is they do it in a completely reductive kind of manner. They put dry ice everywhere, it's like a rock concert, and then they preserve that freshness all the way through. So when you're opening up the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, it has that very distinct characteristic, that very fresh note to it. Now, if you open up a bottle of Chardonnay from Burgundy, it's going to be a little bit rougher, have a little bit maybe that reductive note that we talked about earlier, but also maybe be progressing in the oxidative age of the wine. Because they're doing it in barrel and allowing it to see more oxygen throughout the progress of the process of making it. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. And so, what else? I guess, do you make other Pinot Gris that we should be aware of that are different than the oak style that we're tasting now?
Well, funny that you mentioned that. We actually do have one other Pinot Gris, and as I was saying, it's the majority. It's one sole unit of the two parts of this one that we're trying today. It's solely saw two 2 days of skin contact. It's a very quote unquote natural style, non-interventionalist style wine. So it has a lot more color, and there was very little preservative use. It's a completely different style, no oak contact, 100% stainless steel, and full malolactic fermentation. And it has a cool kind of label. I'll give you a little sneak preview. You want to see a sneak preview?
Wildly different, yeah. Yes, we do.
Hands up if you want to see a sneak preview.
Hands up.
That's
That's a tease. That's a tease, Lee. You're teasing us.
So you got to buy the gift pack to see it.
Come on. All right. So I hear that sometimes are there any artists that roam the cellar that might draw on the barrels with chalk?
There are. To tell you the truth, this was so jam-packed this year that we don't have any artwork on these ones. So maybe afterwards we'll have to get them to draw some pictures. But often in the cellars, yeah, you'll see like little hearts and I love Dad, and Dad's the greatest, and Dad's the greatest winemaker of them all, and Dad's a handsome dude, and Dad's a pretty funny guy, and Dad's beard rocks. That's pretty much what they say.
Well done. All right, so what else can you tell us about oak? What do you love about it? What do you hate about it?
For sure. Oak is a very sensitive thing. So you can very easily overpower a wine using too much oak, and oak of different kinds. So there's two species of oak. So there's the North American species of oak, and then there's the European species of oak. And the European species of oak happens to have a lot more to it. It's very much more dense, but the thing is that it takes longer to actually get in. It's less port, so it has a slower ingress into the wine itself, so it tends to be a little bit more gentle. And so that's why we're using 100% French oak here, is because we want it to be a little bit more true to the characteristics of the fruit. We spend a lot of time building relationships with growers, and we're currently growing our own fruit. This year we're planting 27 acres, and that's a lot of work. And we want to showcase the hard work that we're doing out there and the hard work that's done by the growers that we have these relationships with. We don't necessarily want you to taste the cooperage 100%. We want to use it so that they say it's the spice of winemaking. So we don't want to over spice or season our wines. Being here in Ontario and Prince Edward County specifically, our wines tend to be kind of light, and they don't have like a huge amount of stuffing already in. When I was out in BC and making Syrahs and Cabs and Malbec, and like we used American oak that's way sweeter and more prevalent, and we could get away with that. But here it's a much more delicate. So the thing that I maybe hate about it is that it may cover up the quote unquote terroir of the fruit itself, which is a travesty.
Mm-hmm. It can't be too much oak; it's just too bad.
For sure. What I love about it is tradition. I'm a traditionalist. I love the fact that we've been using these things for centuries. They hold wine incredibly well. So there's no adhesive really in there. They use a little bit of a paste right around the heads, around the chime of the barrel, to actually hold it together and maybe stop a little bit of leakage. But in between the staves, there's no glue or anything holding those together, and they're bending it with fire or water, and there's so many cool techniques in there being used. So a lot of work goes into those barrels as well. I'm not trying to take away from the coopers. But without even using the oak character, they actually have a huge impact on the style of wine. Just with that oxygen that's going in there alone, has a huge amount that has to do with the style of wine. That's why they've come up with technologies such as micro-oxidation, where they try to mimic the barrel. There's so much work is done to try to mimic what happens in the barrel, because it's just something that we've become accustomed to in the style of wines that we drink. We want to taste the oak. We want to taste that oxygen ingress and what it does to the tannin and the flavors of the wine. But it's super expensive to buy these things. One of these things, the big ones here, about over $2,000 Canadian. and it only holds 500 liters, and you can only use it for maybe 5, 6, 7 years if you treat it really well. A stainless steel tank is way less cheap. It's easy to maintain. It's very sterile, where the oak pores and everything in here are not sterile whatsoever. Things like to grow in there. It's a lot of work goes into just making these wine ready, but nobody's really accomplished 100% what happens in this barrel, without using the actual barrel itself.
And I guess they're trying to expedite and speed up that process of oxygen by micro-oxygenation. Because it takes so long and it is so expensive, if you can get the wine at the door faster, it just translates to more dollars coming in quicker, right?
100%.
So yeah, it's hard to do. And that you've worked both in BC and here at Niagara as well, having worked, you mentioned a lot with American oak out there. Is there a preference? Do you like either or better?
I love the European style oak. We also use acacia barrels in BC, which are really kind of cool and unique. I haven't tried it at all on anything here. Don't know if I ever will, really. I'm actually pushing myself further and further into going more and more older oak and neutral oak, and less new oak, and just to preserve that fresh and fruitiness. It's something that I've really kind of loved to do, but I still want to stay within the tradition, and I want to stay within that characteristic, that style of winemaking, that old school style of winemaking as much as I can. But yeah, I would definitely probably stay away from American oak with anything I'm making now.
And so you've got some old school traditions that you appreciate and enjoy, and moving forward now with your new position, Redtail, what will you be planting and what varieties have you already got there?
So we have nothing planted as of today. Nothing. If you look out to our fields, they're bare. So we're actually starting from scratch, but we're going to stay with the two county classics of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And then we also planted Pinot Gris because we love it so much. I'm part of the Burgundian family. And we're also planting some Gamay. Nice. This year.
Go Gamay, go.
Go Gamay, go, part of the lineage. We have a rosé that does really, really well. # porch pounder that the county has coined it. It's really fresh, fruit forward wine that everybody seems to love right now. So we're planting a fair amount of Gamay as well. We have two grape varieties that we're going to be trialing if I could ever get some cyanwood. I'm hoping to do so this year. Which are Georgian varieties. It actually happens that it came from an idea of me trying to think of alternative type of varieties to trial here with you, Jay, at a tasting group that we were a part of. And I was thinking of orange wine, and I've never made a full-on orange wine before. And everybody's always pushing me to do that as much as I can. And I've always kind of hesitated because if I was going to do it, I was going to do it right. And one of the varieties I had in mind was Muscat, because it seems to be, it's an ancient grape. It has a massive amount of character that you'll pull out of those skins. But then you were like, well, why don't you go pure OG and try Ricatatelli? So then I started researching Ricatatelli from Georgia a lot. And it seems like it would actually be a good fit here. It's a high acid grape. It ripens fairly easy, buds a little bit late, so good frost protection. So it actually, and it's grown in Eastern Europe, right? A fair amount. So their climate seems to be somewhat closely related to ours. So it's one thing that we're going to try to try if we can find a source of it. And the other one is Saperavi. And Saperavi is a red grape from Georgia as well. And the thing that we really kind of thought was fun with that one is that it's actually Vitis vinifera grapes. So that's the family of grapes, the noble grapes that come from Europe that use predominantly for winemaking, but it has a characteristic called Teinturier. And Teinturier is actually where the color, the anthocyanin, the phenolic responsible for the color of the grape is actually built within the juice itself. So when you press it, it's actually coming out with a fair amount of color already.
Is the flesh dark as well, or is it just the the skin.
Yeah, so two grapes that you probably be familiar with that have that is actually a Faux Shimbaco.
Right.
They're a hybrid grape though. This is actually a characteristic within a vitis vinifera. But yeah, if you're to break it open, the flesh itself is actually already kind of purpley in color, and the juice itself already has a lot of color.
Interesting.
One of the things that some people don't realize is that when you buy champagne, you're actually buying, in some cases, predominantly red grapes that were just pressed right away, whole cluster, and they don't have skin contact, so it actually turns out to be a white wine. You can actually buy Blanc de Noir style wines that are 100% made from Pinot Noir or Pinot Meunier, or a combination of both.
And so, okay, and so how much of the Georgian varieties will you be planting on site?
Because I'm crazy, I'm only allowed to plant an acre of each. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Well, it'd be interesting. Yeah, at one time, Rick Satelli was the #1 planted white grape in the world.
Yeah, right.
It was hard to see. It fed primarily Russia at the beginning of the century, but now I don't know. Do you as a off the top random quiz question? Does anybody know the most grown white grape in the world?
I would say Chardonnay.
You could, yes. It's in fact the second most white grape. I think it's like the 5th or 6th grape grown in the world, but it's the second white grape.
Huh. You know the answer to this already, eh? Look at you.
I do like it.
Is anybody else Googling? Can somebody Google this? Batista, how fast were you at Googling? The Googly machine out.
No, Trebbiano, absolutely not.
Oh,
no,
no,
sorry. And of which Trebbiano, there's many. But no, not Trebbiano. It's Ariane.
I want to say
Spain.
Riesling. What's that?
Ariane.
Oh, wow.
From Spain. So they make a lot of brandy there.
Yeah.
And they use a lot of it for also port and sherry and just brandy
sherry,
production. Yeah. So
yeah.
Ariane's the #1 white grape in the world.
Cool.
By far. Like it's just the #1 grape variety in the world too, but also the #1 white.
Okay, but if we were to say the #1 white grape for the purpose of making wine, would it be Chardonnay?
Absolutely.
Yes. See, that's what I teach my class at Loyalist College, is that Chardonnay is the #1 wine grape.
Yeah. What does it say? Since you want to say it.
The next collab has 2 of Lee's favorite wines. Since he won't say it, I will. They are, I didn't see it. That's the last part. What does it say? What did Hoffman say?
Lee unleashes himself on small lots.
Yeah, well, I gave you the preview of the one.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have, so this was that's the preview. And then I have a preview of the second one.
Ooh. And a crown cap. Look at that.
Is it a sparkling wine or is it a still wine? I don't know.
I don't know. Oh. That was a quick one. Well, if you haven't placed the order yet, then by all means, we encourage you to do so. I'm sure there'll be follow-up emails after this to encourage you to do so. I hope that you're all enjoying this. So just briefly, I want to come back to skin contact a little bit. You mentioned that a few times with this Pinot Gris, with the other Pinot Gris, and orange wines and your interest in it. What's happening with that? Why haven't you done it when everybody else seems to be making an orange wine and skin contact white?
I don't know. It's hard to jump on a trend sometimes. I always struggle with it's hard to be original when it comes to winemaking, because you only have so many. So they say that winemaking is a series of 1,000 different questions, right? And opportunities, which it is, but everybody has the same 1,000 questions and opportunities most of the time. And right now, everybody is choosing to push skin contact on whites as much as they possibly can. Skin contact, skin contact, skin contact, skin contact, which is great. It's a cool style of wine, but I don't want to be also seen as just like a person that's jumping on that trend. So again, that's why I said like maybe being a little bit original, being the first person to grow a variety specifically for the reason of making that style of wine will really, really make it a bit more original by reverting as far away back in history as I possibly can. Again, being a traditionalist and a person that really enjoys the history of wine as well. So pushing it to that extreme is really cool. people are doing that right now. Like they're using amphora and clay, the clay pots that they were originally doing it in. They're not adding any preservatives in some of the cases, or very little, and they're just throwing it in and seeing what happens, which is great, yeah, my hesitation has always been is that I don't want to be seen as a person jumping on the bandwagon, let's say.
I'm curious to know if everybody who still is here listening, who drinks white skin contact white wines? Do they enjoy them? Do you search them out? Do you hate them? I mean, there's a camp of people that just very much dislike them as well. So I'm just interested to if anyone has any comments through it, please let us know. What else are you guys working on there at Red Tail? That seems to be a lot. You got 27 acres. You got some new varieties.
Yeah.
What else is happening? What's keeping you inspired there?
We have an amazing team of people. We've been building a super cool team of people that have been working. So working on projects such as this, like I pretty much Monkman has told you time and time again that this was my idea. After many glasses of wine, I was just like, oh, let's get together and like sell wine together, during a crazy COVID evening. But we weren't the ones that really made it happen. Like I came and got half dressed up and put on a tie and came up with the idea. But there's so many other people that have made this happen. Like mine and Monkman's places of where we work. It's a young, fresh team that are really kind of learning to work with one another and enjoying to do so. So. Unique processes in marketing and retail and a new fresh look at it because we're all really young and coming up in our careers. I think the oldest employee here is me. So a young, fresh look at things.
Well done. And you're still looking young and fresh.
Thanks. So fresh and so clean.
Yeah, indeed. It's that snappy tie. I feel like I should have worn. I'm undressed. I'm not up to your caliber here today. Looking good though.
Oh, thanks, man. And then so we have a couple new releases. So the rosé was one that it's funny. Like I go up to Midtown and the people there are just like, "Are you loving how many people are loving your wine?" And that was it's crazy to me how much people are loving that specific wine. This Pinot Gris that you guys are trying, I like it better myself. It's super. It's more of a serious wine. It's more food driven. It's less of that porch pounder quality. And then we have these two small batches. Again, going to be in the next collab. And those two are actually the ones I've really pushed myself to do less. And I. Both of them I really love. One of them is actually my favorite wine that I made this year, that we only made a super small amount. I think there's only 60 cases, 6D. Everything that we made here is pretty smallish, especially in the wine world. But 60 cases is practically nothing. So when it comes out, and I can't really say much, Kirsten, our marketing person, is standing behind the camera telling me to be quiet right now. So I want to tell you more, but you have to wait. Yeah.
60 cases of something very exciting that you're super passionate and loving right now will be out sometime soon.
Yes. Right. And the thing that I've really I've been pushing for is to make it reasonably priced, which is great because I'm broke. I went to post-secondary for too long, so I want to be able to buy cases of my own wine. So I hope that goes to you guys as well as that was a doing of many people here, but we're really trying to make it accessible right now to everyone.
That's good to know. It's because yes, wine can be sometimes prohibitively expensive. The higher up we go, and the special occasion unicorn wines can be obviously very expensive, but we like to drink wine every day, so we need something that's approachable and tastes good. Yeah.
So my favorite wine in the cellar right now, that we only made 60 cases of, is actually, what is it 24? 24 is going to be $24. So that's, yeah.
All right. That's fantastic. And can we say when it will be released?
End of June.
End of June. Okay.
Yes.
60 cases. So
it's available right now for purchase in the County Collab.
Okay. So maybe if we get 60 people to purchase the County Collab, they'll get not only a sneak peek, but they'll be able to be the only ones to have it.
Yeah. No, 100%. They'll be the only ones that have it.
All right. Wow. Okay. So sign up now. Get the cases and get it happening.
Yeah.
So I have a question about what are some of your inspirations and wines that you enjoy drinking outside of the county, and maybe when you're home for dinner, or what do you like to drink?
What time of year is it, and what am I eating? No, I do love to drink as much Burgundian as I can afford.
Yes.
Which isn't much. I love Rieslings, although I haven't really made too much Riesling in my life on my own. I made two. One that was a commercial release, and one was a couple carboys in the back of a cellar that I kind of forgot about and turned out really, really cool and distinctive. But I do really, really enjoy it. It's another one of those wines that it's a different wine making style. Again, a lot of the time it's not in oak barrels, it's in stainless steel, but it really captures and differs greatly amongst where it was grown. So it's a good medium to showcase the French notion of terroir and the sense of place, I find. And there's just so many different styles. There's dry, acidic, or really sweet and low in alcohol, high in alcohol, really rich characteristics, and sparkling. Thank you for taking the words right out of my mouth, Jay.
Sorry to keep it going. Yeah. And so, is there any particular reasons from anywhere in the world that you love?
No, I can't say that I want to pick a favorite. I really like Alsatian wines. Alsace was, I went backpacking as a crazy guy out of university and spent way too much money. I'm probably still paying for it now. But Alsace was a place that really stuck in my mind of one of my favorite places that I've ever visited before. But the one thing that I really enjoyed was the culture there. I don't know if most of you probably already know, but Alsace is right on the border of Germany and France, and has changed hands as many times as there's been wars. So there's a big mixture of German and French cultures, and same with the wine and the food styles are a mixture of both of those cultures together. So I really, really appreciate those, and they're built to last, and really big, rich wines, and quite expressive. They're quite beautiful wines.
And one of the few places in the old world, as it were, or France particularly, that actually has variety labeling.
Yes, which is really kind of cool. It makes it easier for people like me who don't speak French. Je ne parle français. So it makes it easier for me to pronounce things, because it's stuff that's been put in my head over and over again.
You can actually see it. So in terms of Burgundy, and obviously we can't afford Costerie or Pliny Montrachet every day, but what other Chardonnays from around the world do you look for as put in your glass?
So yes, if you're coming for the budget kind of guy, South Africa, of all places, makes some pretty stellar Chardonnay and Chenin Blanc that are really, like you get them for a steal. And as far as wine quality goes, they're pretty high. They were terrible when I first got into wine, getting on 20 years ago. But now they're really coming up and putting a lot of money and experience into their winemaking. So it's a huge non-interventionist or natural style wine movement there as well. So you can find some of those if you go to the SAQ and fun things like that.
Yeah, Terry. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And so if you only had two grapes, a red and a white, to grow for the rest of your life and make wines from, which would they be?
Do I still live in the county?
Anywhere. You could be anywhere in the world.
So I like automatically I want to take the easy answer and say Pinot and Chard because I love them. Like Pinot's, especially Pinot has turned into be my life almost to a degree. I hate it. I like the thing that I struggle with because you start out with the growing. I hate growing Pinot Noir. It's like the worst thing ever. It literally keeps you up at nights. You walk a field one day and it looks gorgeous, and then the next day, it's breaking down on you. But the thing is the reward of tasting it in the glass afterwards. Like you've struggled through it, and you've if everything in the world was easy, you would have a feeling of reward at the end of the day. So I feel that it's important, like people that are just handed everything in their life tend not to be super happy because they didn't have to enjoy that struggle. Batista tells me this all the time.
I feel they lack character too.
Yeah, and so Batista always says that he admires the way that I came up in the wine world because I started out as being practically a migrant worker to a degree. I worked in the fields and sweated at Compliment, at Lely and at Malabar for years, putting myself through university and then going to university and I'm still paying for that today too. And then being an assistant winemaker in 2 regions and then coming over to Prince Edward County and then finally getting the opportunity to make wine that I wanted to make is kind of like growing Pinot Noir. Like it has to struggle to get there. But maybe that experience just makes you pay that much more attention when it gets into the cellar, and it ends up being the most beautiful thing that you could possibly produce.
And then
so, for my whites,
yes,
Chardonnay, but maybe that's untrue. Maybe it is Riesling. I can't really say that one for sure. I'm kind of torn on that one. I like Chardonnay, and people say that it's the winemaker's blank canvas. It's a thing that they really get to show their skills off of on because it's not just a straight ferment and put in the bottle. You have to protect it in the barrel for longer, and you have the opportunity to choose malolactic fermentation, no malolactic fermentation. You have the opportunity to choose oak. What force it comes from and how much new oak you're using, or if you're just going to put it in a stainless steel or do a combination of both, you have all these options. Where Riesling, if you're making Riesling in a traditional sense, you're putting it in stainless steel, you're fermenting it, and then you're putting it right into a bottle. Yeah, I don't know. Come back on me after a couple more glasses of wine, and I'll give you my answer maybe.
All right, so at least we've narrowed it down to 3. That's good, and 2 of which you've planted a lot of. So. We look forward to seeing those. Before we wrap this up, does anyone have any questions?
I think I saw a couple trickle through. I couldn't catch them though.
I haven't really asked how much the Pinot Gris was. It's $19. Lots of adulation for both you and Batista. And a shout out to Lacey making a skin contact goo, a gorgeous demeanor.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Another person that does a lot of it in here is Mackenzie at Trail. That's kind of her shtick. So if you really want to find some really great examples of skin contact whites, definitely look up Trail. And then also Jonas at Hinterland through the Imparfait label of wines. He's really kind of pushing those limits as well. He's got some really crazy stuff. I made the majority of my harvest at Hinterland, so I got to see Jonas in action. And he's got some really, really cool wines to be checking out soon as well.
He does. One question here. There you go.
Okay. So it depends on how the seasons go, how good of a grape grower I end up being. But generally speaking, between 4 to 5 years is when we'll first be taking our first crop off. If we were in a really kind of vigorous area, it could be under like around 3 years. But around here, I would say 4 to 5 is probably the best bet. Thanks, Adrian.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Does anybody else have any other questions? Lee, is there anything else you want to you want to talk about?
No other questions? Last chance. Okay. You keep on asking about me, Jay, and things that I like to do. One of the things that I like to do, and my wife will always tell you that I like to change the words of songs. And I'm a terrible guitar player, but I happen to bring my guitar along. Oh, wait, wrong one.
I love this off camera. This is great. What else have you got hiding back there?
I don't know. But thanks for enjoying the Gris. Oh, sorry, again, wrong label. The Gris.
Delicious.
Here we go. This is the actual one right here. And I want you guys to sing along if you know it. Can you hear it?
You got it?
Yeah, I'm a terrible guitar player and singer, by the way. So you're going to have to live through this. This grape's an aromatic grape, but I didn't know what I was to do. By now, I thought I somehow realized something tried and true. I don't believe that anybody could tell how you soak on this wine. Backbeat, the word is on the street that we cut down an old oak, that's true. I'm sure you heard it all before, but the staves aren't held with glue. I don't believe that anybody could tell how you soak on this wine. I ferment it in oak to give it its body. I bet people might think that this technique was shoddy. There were many things that I wasn't supposed to do, but I did them anyhow. Anyhow. I said, barrel, you're not perfectly sterile. Just a lightest toast to build up the texture the most. Should I go around one more time on the course there?
Well, yeah.
Barrel, barrel, you're not perfectly sterile. I chose the lightest toast to build up the texture the most. Thank you for suffering through that, everybody.
Way done. Well done. Well done. Stick to fly fishing, he says.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the wine. Make sure to sign up for the next county collab. We got some crazy things. A very, very special release from Hubs Creek as well. That is a big secret, like a big, big secret. The biggest of secrets in the county winemaking world. We showed a couple of secrets that we're going to come up to. The next county collab is going to be absolutely off the hook. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, you're going to be making a cider at home. For real.
True story.
For real. Cheers, everybody.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Bye,
Lee.
bye.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks for everyone.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.